You're seeing this because you're entering the biggest comeback. The pressure crushing you right now, the failure that makes you feel broken, the stagnation that makes you wonder if you'll ever rise again. This isn't the end. Carl Jung discovered this was a specific psychological signal, a marker that something powerful is about to happen. Jung found that the deeper you fall, the higher you can ascend, but only if you recognize the one sign that the shift is already happening inside you. Jung called it the psychological slingshot. What feels like a breakdown is actually something he termed regression in the service of the ego. Your psyche is pulling back, loading energy, preparing for a launch that society will never see coming. Consider a case profile that illustrates this pattern perfectly, a composite example based on patterns Jung consistently observed in his clinical work. A man arrives at the therapy room completely destroyed. He has lost his business, his marriage has collapsed, and he spends most days unable to get out of bed. Society looks at him and sees a failure, a cautionary tale, someone who has given up. But in this narrative illustration, we see something different emerging. The therapist notices this man's eyes. During the sessions, when asked about his past, the man doesn't speak with the voice of someone defeated. He speaks with precision. He remembers every mistake, every moment where he compromised himself, every person who betrayed him, every decision that led to his downfall. This wasn't depression. This was data collection. The man wasn't broken. He was analyzing, studying, learning from the fall in ways that success never could have taught him. Jung understood that this phase was dangerous, not because the person might give up, but because society would tell them to medicate the pain away, to distract themselves, to move on quickly and forget what happened. Jung knew that stopping this descent prematurely would kill something essential, the very energy needed for the comeback. In this pattern, Jung observed repeatedly, 6 months later, the person would return transformed. They had started a new business using everything they learned from their failure. They had rebuilt their life on principles they actually believed in, not the ones society had sold them. They were no longer the person who fell. They were the person who survived the fall and came back smarter. They call it depression. Jung called it the descent into power. If you're in this phase right now, you need to understand what's actually happening. Your energy isn't disappearing, it's being compressed. Think of a coiled spring. The tighter it gets compressed, the more force it releases when it finally lets go. Jung called this the coil effect. You feel exhausted because your psyche is doing invisible work. It's reorganizing your entire identity, breaking down the false self you built to please others, dismantling the beliefs that never served you, clearing space for something authentic to emerge. This isn't wasted time. This is preparation time, and the depth of your preparation determines the height of your comeback. Here's what most people don't understand about this phase. While you're down there in the darkness, your unconscious mind is running simulations. It's testing new versions of who you could become. It's processing failures you experienced. It's identifying patterns you couldn't see while you were busy performing for others. Your conscious mind thinks you're doing nothing, but your unconscious mind is doing everything. It's the difference between surface-level change and deep transformation. Surface-level change is when you switch jobs but keep the same limiting beliefs. Deep transformation is when you rebuild your entire operating system. Jung identified specific signs that the shift has already started. These aren't abstract concepts. These are concrete markers you can recognize in your own experience right now. First, you feel a strange calm in the middle of chaos. While everything around you is falling apart, something inside you becomes still, almost detached. You stop reacting the way you used to. The things that once triggered you barely register now. People notice it. They ask if you're okay. You say yes, and you actually mean it. Not because everything is fine, but because you've stopped needing everything to be fine. Second, you lose interest in the validation you used to chase. The approval that once felt like oxygen now feels empty. You stop performing for people who were never really watching anyway. You pull back from social situations that drain you, and instead of feeling lonely, you feel relief. Instead of FOMO, you feel freedom. You realize that most of what you called your social life was actually your performance schedule. Third, your dreams become vivid, intense, sometimes disturbing. Jung knew dreams were the unconscious mind's way of communicating. During this phase, your dreams are showing you the parts of yourself you buried, the anger you suppressed, the ambition you were told to hide, the power you were taught to fear. These dreams aren't random. They're messages. Your psyche is trying to show you what needs to be integrated. Fourth, you start noticing synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem too perfect to be random. You think about someone and they contact you. You need information and it appears. You wonder about a direction and signs point you there. Jung called this synchronicity, the alignment between your inner transformation and outer reality. It's not magic. It's your psyche becoming so focused that it starts recognizing patterns and opportunities you were blind to before. Fifth, you feel a growing intolerance for fakeness. You can't sit through shallow conversations anymore. You can't pretend to care about things that don't matter. You can't fake laugh at jokes that aren't funny. This isn't you being negative. This is you becoming real. And real people have a low tolerance for performance. Time 0.6. Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The alchemist's path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. These aren't random symptoms. These are markers. Evidence that your psyche is preparing for something bigger than what broke you. But here's what makes this phase so hard. You're doing this work in isolation. The people around you don't understand what's happening. They see you withdrawing and think you're giving up. They see you quiet and think you're depressed. They see you changing and think something's wrong. They offer advice that worked for them. But their advice is designed for surface-level problems. You're not dealing with a surface-level problem. You're dealing with a complete identity breakdown. Their solutions are band-aids. You need surgery. So you stop trying to explain. You stop defending your process. You stop justifying why you need this time alone. And that creates even more distance. But it's necessary distance, because you can't transform while managing other people's anxiety about your transformation. Jung understood this loneliness deeply. His own documented confrontation with the unconscious from 1913 to 1919 mirrors this exact pattern. During those years, he lost friends. Professional colleagues distanced themselves. People thought he was losing his mind, but he was actually finding it. He was descending into his own psyche to discover truths that would change psychology forever. Jung wrote about feeling completely alone during this period. But he also wrote about the necessity of that solitude. He couldn't have done the deep work while maintaining his social obligations. He couldn't have discovered his theories while performing the role of successful psychiatrist. He had to withdraw. He had to descend. He had to let the old version of himself die. You're not crazy for needing this time. You're not weak for falling apart. You're doing the hardest work a human being can do. You're becoming real. And becoming real requires killing everything fake. That process looks like destruction from the outside, but from the inside, it's construction. Think about it this way. Before you can build a new building, you have to demolish the old one. You have to clear the land. You have to dig deep foundations. To someone walking by the construction site, it looks like nothing is happening. Just dirt and holes and chaos. But the architect knows. The foundation is everything. Rush it, and the building collapses. Do it right, and you can build skyscrapers. And that brings us to the moment everything changes. Jung called it enantiodromia, a Greek term meaning the emergence of the opposite. It's the principle that anything pushed to its extreme eventually becomes its opposite. Day turns to night, summer turns to winter, and the person at their lowest point becomes the person at their highest power. You can't force this moment. You can't rush it. You can't manufacture it through positive thinking or manifestation rituals. But you can recognize it when it arrives. And when it does arrive, you need to be ready to move. It starts with a single thought, a thought that cuts through all the noise. A moment of clarity, so sharp it feels like waking up from a years-long sleep. You see exactly what you need to do, not what you should do, not what others expect, what you actually need to do. And for the first time in maybe your entire life, you trust that knowing. Then comes the energy, not the manic energy of desperation, not the frantic energy of someone trying to outrun their pain, but a steady, relentless drive, like a river that's been dammed up finally breaking through. You start moving, taking action, building, creating. And this time, you're not doing it for applause. You're doing it because something inside you demands it, because not doing it would be more painful than any failure. The confusion becomes clarity. You're not second-guessing every decision anymore. You're not paralyzed by options. You see the path, you take it, you adjust as you go, but you keep moving. The victim becomes the victor. You stop telling the story of what happened to you and start creating the story of what you're building. You stop explaining your wounds and start demonstrating your strength. You stop asking for understanding and start commanding respect through your actions. The person who couldn't get out of bed becomes the person who works 18-hour days and still has energy left, not because they're running from pain, but because they're running toward purpose, not because they're addicted to hustle, but because they've found work that feels like play, work that aligns with who they actually are instead of who they were pretending to be. This is enantiodromia, the moment the compressed spring releases, the moment potential energy becomes kinetic energy, the moment everything you suffered through converts into fuel for everything you're about to build. This pattern appears consistently throughout Jung's documented clinical observations. The deeper the descent, the more powerful the ascent. But only if the person doesn't abort the process halfway through. Only if they resist the pressure to bounce back before the transformation completes. This is why premature positivity is so dangerous. Well-meaning, people tell you to look on the bright side, to count your blessings, to just be grateful. And all of that has its place. But not during the descent. During the descent, you need to go all the way down. You need to feel everything. You need to face what you've been avoiding. You need to let the old self completely die. Trying to be positive during this phase is like trying to butterfly stroke while you're drowning. It wastes energy. It prevents you from touching bottom, and touching bottom is how you launch back up. Now let me tell you what the comeback actually looks like, because it's not what you think. And understanding this now will help you recognize it when it happens. You're not going back to your old life with better luck. You're not becoming the person you were before the fall. That person is gone. And that's the point. That's the whole point of the descent. To kill who you were so you can become who you're meant to be. The comeback is stepping into a completely new level of consciousness. It's like upgrading your operating system. Everything runs smoother, faster, more efficiently, but it's still you. Just the version of you that was buried under years of programming and performance. You see people differently now. You can spot fake friends in seconds. The ones who only showed up for your highlights. The ones who disappeared during your lowlights. The ones who are circling back now that they sense you rising. You see them all clearly, and you make different choices about who gets access to your energy. You recognize manipulation before it starts. The guilt trips, the emotional blackmail, the subtle put-downs disguised as jokes, the ways people try to shrink you so they feel bigger. You used to fall for all of it. Now you see it coming from miles away, and you simply don't engage. You understand power dynamics that used to confuse you. You see who has real power and who just has a title. You see who's actually confident and who's just performing confidence. You see who's genuinely happy for your success and who's smiling through clenched teeth. You make decisions faster because you trust yourself now. You've been to the bottom and survived. What's there to fear? Failure. You've already failed. Rejection. You've already been rejected. Loss. You've already lost. And you're still here, still standing, still building. This creates a different kind of confidence, not the loud, performative kind that needs constant validation, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it's woven into everything you do, the kind that makes people uncomfortable because they can't figure out where it comes from. They're looking for arrogance, narcissism, delusion, but they find none of that, just calm certainty, and it unsettles them because they've never developed it themselves. You stop explaining yourself to people who never understood you anyway. You stop defending your choices to people who never supported you. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop dimming your light so others don't feel inadequate. And here's what shocks everyone. The same people who abandoned you during your fall suddenly want to be close again. They sense something different about you. They can't name it, but they feel it. Power recognizes power. Even when people don't consciously understand what they're seeing, they start reaching out. Hey, we should catch up. I've been thinking about you. How have you been? And it all sounds friendly, but you can feel the real question underneath. What changed? How did you do it? Can some of that energy rub off on me? But you're different now. You're selective. You know who earned the right to be in your life and who's just attracted to your new energy. You know who was there when you had nothing to offer and who's only showing up now that you have something they want. You build boundaries that used to feel impossible. Not mean. Boundaries. Not punishing boundaries. Just clear ones. This is what I'm available for. This is what I'm not available for. This is how you can treat me. This is how you can't treat me. And you enforce them without guilt, without explanation, without negotiation. People call you cold now, changed, not the same anymore. And they're absolutely right. You're not the same. That was the whole point. The old you got destroyed in the fall. The new you was forged in the comeback. And the new you doesn't have time for the dynamics that kept the old you small. This is what Jung meant when he talked about individuation. Becoming who you actually are instead of who you were programmed to be. The fall was necessary. It destroyed the false self. The comeback builds the real one. Let me tell you why this matters right now. You're reading this at the exact moment you needed to see it. That's not coincidence. Jung believed in synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that guide us when we're ready to receive the message. If you're in the descent phase, this is your confirmation. Keep going. Don't medicate it away. Don't distract yourself into numbness. Feel everything. Learn everything. Let this pressure compress you into something unbreakable. If you're in the calm before the shift, this is your warning. The energy is about to release. Get ready, because when enantiodromia hits, it hits fast. Have your plan ready. Know what you're building toward, because you won't have time to figure it out once the momentum starts. If you're already in the comeback phase, this is your reminder. You're not imagining it. The shift is real. The power is real. And everyone who doubted you is about to see exactly what you became while they weren't paying attention. Jung spent his entire career studying transformation, and he kept coming back to one truth. The hero's journey isn't a myth. It's a psychological pattern. You descend into darkness. You face your shadow. You integrate what you find there, and you return with power the old you could never have accessed. The arrow had to be pulled back, all the way back, so it could fly this far. Think about every story you've ever loved, every hero you've ever admired. They all followed this pattern. They all had their descent. Luke Skywalker losing his hand, Batman losing everything in the pit, Rocky getting destroyed in the ring, Harry Potter walking into the forest to die. The fall isn't the end of the story. It's the middle, the part where everything transforms. You're in your middle right now. And I know it feels like the end. I know it feels like you'll never rise again. But Jung's research proved otherwise. He tracked patients for decades, and the ones who leaned into the descent, who trusted the process, who let themselves be completely destroyed so they could be rebuilt correctly, they became the most powerful versions of themselves. Not powerful in the shallow way, powerful in the deep way, the kind of power that changes lives, that builds empires, that creates legacies. So here's what you do next. And I mean this literally. Not someday. Not when you feel ready. Today. Right now. Stop fighting the pressure. Stop pretending you're okay when you're not. Stop rushing the process. Because society tells you to bounce back quickly. Stop performing recovery for people who wouldn't help you during the fall. Instead, go deeper. Lean into the discomfort. Ask yourself the hard questions, the ones you've been avoiding. Who am I without the masks? What do I actually want versus what I was told to want? What parts of my old life were built on lies I told myself? What needs to die so something real can be born? What am I afraid of finding if I go all the way down? Journal your answers. Not for anyone else. For you. This is your data collection phase, your analysis, your preparation. Write the ugly truth, the shameful truth, the truth you've never said out loud. Get it out of your head and onto paper, because what stays in the shadows has power over you. What you bring into the light loses that power. Cut out the noise, the people who drain you, the ones who call themselves friends but treat you like an emotional dumping ground, the family members who use guilt as a control mechanism, the activities that numb you instead of fulfilling you, the obligations that don't serve your real goals, the commitments you made from a version of yourself that no longer exists. Create space, silence, room for your authentic self to emerge. Turn off the podcast, close the self-help book, stop consuming other people's answers, and start discovering your own. Your psyche can't speak to you through the noise. It needs quiet. It needs stillness. It needs you to stop running from yourself long enough to hear what it's trying to tell you. And trust the timeline. Your comeback isn't on society's schedule. It's on your psyche's schedule. Some people need 6 months in the descent. Some need 2 years. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you complete the process. What matters is that you don't cut it short because someone else is uncomfortable with your transformation. Because here's what happens if you abort it early. You get a false comeback, a temporary high that collapses because it was built on the same foundation that failed you before. You end up right back in the descent. But this time it's worse because you wasted the lesson. You have to go through it all again. Except now, you've lost time. And you've lost trust in yourself. Do it right the first time. Let yourself fully break, fully transform, fully become. Be patient with the process, even when everyone else is impatient with you. And when the energy releases, when an antiodromia hits, when you feel that unstoppable drive rising inside you, pour it into something that matters. Don't waste your comeback on revenge. Don't waste it on proving people wrong. Don't waste it on making your doubters eat their words. They don't matter. They never mattered. Build the business, write the book, create the art, launch the movement, train your body, master your craft, build wealth, build influence, build a life so undeniable that their opinions become irrelevant. Build something so aligned with your authentic self that you do it even if no one was watching. Jung believed we all have what he called a destiny, not fate, not a predetermined path, but a soul-level calling, a direction our deepest self wants to move toward. Most people never find it because they're too busy living everyone else's version of their life, living up to expectations, playing roles, maintaining images, keeping peace. The descent strips all of that away. It removes everything that isn't you. And what's left? That core that survived the fire? That nucleus that remained after everything else burned away? That's your real self. That's your power. That's what you build your comeback on. Your biggest comeback starts now. Not when you feel ready. Not when the pain stops. Not when people give you permission. Now, in the middle of the pressure, in the depth of the descent, in the darkness, where no one else can see what you're becoming. Now is when you decide to trust the process. The people who never fell will never understand what you're becoming. They'll watch your comeback from the outside and think it was luck, timing, privilege. They'll make up stories to explain your rise that have nothing to do with the work you did in the dark. And that's fine. They're not your audience. Your audience is the future you who will look back at this moment and realize this was when everything changed. This was when you stopped being the person things happen to and became the person who makes things happen. This was when you stopped asking permission and started taking what's yours. This was when you stopped explaining and started executing. The arrow is pulled back as far as it will go. You can feel the tension, the pressure, the potential energy compressed into this single moment. Every failure you experienced, every betrayal you endured, every moment you thought you wouldn't survive. It's all stored in that arrow. It's all converted into fuel. And when you release, when you finally let that energy explode forward, you're going to fly further than you ever imagined possible. Not because you got lucky, because you earned it, because you went through the full descent and came out transformed. Jung's observations proved it across countless clinical examples. The pattern holds. The deeper the fall, the higher the rise. But only for those who complete the journey. Only for those who resist the urge to abort the process. Only for those who trust that the darkness has a purpose. Now it's your turn to prove it. Not to anyone else. To yourself. If you're ready for your comeback, like this video and subscribe to join the few who understand what real transformation looks like. Comment, "I am rising below," not just for the algorithm. For yourself, as a declaration, as a commitment, as a promise to the version of you that's being forged in this fire right now. Because we rise together, not by staying comfortable, but by embracing the fall that makes the rise inevitable. By trusting the process, even when it looks like destruction. By knowing that compression comes before explosion. The biggest comeback of your life is already happening. You just didn't recognize it until now. But now you know. Now you see it. Now you can trust it. Now you can stop resisting it and start working with it. Welcome to the other side. Your power was worth the wait. Your transformation was worth the pain. Your comeback will be worth the fall. The arrow is ready. The target is clear, and you've been pulled back far enough. It's time to fly. In the alchemist's path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com.